Hey, thanks for coming out. I think this is our fifth town hall Q&A that we've done, and this is our sixth. Did I get that wrong? All right, thank you for correcting me. That is the spirit with which we do these town hall Q&As. Is I often get things wrong. Okay, so the reason why we started doing these is that we've done them at Facebook, the company internally for many years, and it's this really valuable tradition where, on the one hand, I get to hear from people who work at Facebook and now are in our broader community about what the issues that you guys have are with what we're doing, right? So what we can be doing to serve you better and build better products for everyone in the world. And then at the same time, it's a good opportunity for me to try to explain some of the things that we're doing and have a way to do that directly for everyone in our community, so that way I don't have to go through journalists or other folks who might have their own agenda when they're writing about us. So that's what we're doing with our town hall Q&A, and I'm really excited that you guys are here with us. Today is actually, it's my birthday, and I can't think of thank you.
Happy birthday to you.
All right.
Happy birthday, dear Mark. Happy birthday to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I don't have a cake. Maybe we have a cake for you guys later after this. But I can't think of anything more fun to be doing on my birthday than spending time with people in our community, talking to you guys and hearing about what your questions are. So let's get to it. So Charles is going to moderate.
Exactly. By the way, there are cupcakes out front. So if you guys have cake envy, there's enough for everybody. All right, thanks, Mark. So before we kick off and raise hands, I'm going to give everyone a little bit of information of how all this works. So we've gotten thousands of questions from around the world on Facebook. I'm going to read some of those. Some people sent in videos. Some people have even flown in to ask their questions in person. In addition to that, I'm going to turn to you guys here in the room. We're going to take your questions as well, and I'll give you a signal when we're ready for that. But where I want to start is with the most popular question from Mark's post. So let's dive right in with that. So Mark, this question comes from Israel, but is about Ukraine. Not to get confusing. So it actually had 45,000 likes on your profile. So it's from Gregory, and he says, Mark, I see many reports of unfair Facebook account blocking, probably as a result of massive fake abuse reports. These often involve the Facebook accounts of many top pro-Ukrainian bloggers and posts about the current Russian-Ukrainian conflict. My question is, can you or your team please do something to resolve this problem? Maybe create a separate administration for the Ukrainian segment, block abuse reports from Russia, or just monitor the top Ukrainian bloggers more carefully. Help us, please. And as a follow-up to this, and we'll show this on the screen, the Ukrainian president, Petro Poroshenko, actually sent in a question as well. And he asks, Mark, will you establish a Facebook office in Ukraine?
All right.
It's a mouthful.
All right, well, let's get into it. So 45,000 votes for that question is I think makes it by far the most voted on question that we've ever had at one of these Q&As. So I did some research before this to make sure that I had the right answer to this one. There were a few different parts of the question. One was about content moderation and some specific types of content that have been taken down that some Ukrainian folks have posted. The second part of it is about how we do moderation and overall kind of what our approach is to that. And then the third, which Ukrainian president has written in on, is will we open up an office in Ukraine? So I'll go through each of those. For the first, there's been a bunch of content that has been posted that violates the rules that we have around hate speech, right? So we don't allow people to post content on Facebook that is overtly hateful towards another group, that has ethnic slurs, that tries to incite violence towards an ethnic group or anything like that. And unfortunately, there were a few posts that folks were posting that that kind of tripped that rule. And other folks in our community reported that in, and we looked at those, and we made the determination that some of these posts included these ethnic slurs against some Russian folks, and we took down those posts. And I looked into this personally because this question had 45,000 votes on it, so I wanted to make sure that I understood what I was talking about before we got up here. And I stand by that. I think we did the right thing according to our policies in taking down those posts. And I agree with the policies that we have around not supporting hate speech. I think that is a good set of rules that we have on the system. Now, there were a couple of questions that folks were asking about, were these posts by Ukrainians moderated by Russians, where there's the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And there was this meme that was floating around that this policy and the content moderation was done out of a Russian office by Russians who were anti-Ukrainian. And that's not true. So first of all, we don't actually have a Russian office. So anyone who thinks that this was done out of a Russian office, that should probably put that to rest. We also don't have a Ukrainian office, and we actually don't have offices in a lot of countries around the world, but maybe over time. And what we try to do is when people write in and report content, we try to have folks who speak that language review it. And we have a European headquarters in Dublin, where we have folks who speak a lot of different languages from around the world, look at the different content, and that's what we did here. Now, we did make one mistake, which was when we reached out to some of the folks to tell them about the content that we'd taken down, there was a bug in our system where we accidentally told folks that we were taking it down because the post contained nudity instead of hate speech. So that was a mistake, and we are that was a bug in the software that we were running. We fixed that. We have reached out and apologized to folks. It's pretty clear if you look at the post that they don't contain nudity, so I understand why that was the source of some confusion. But we'll try not to make that mistake anymore. To the question from the Ukrainian president, and I think a bunch of other people wrote in with this as well, about are we willing to put an office in Ukraine? Over time, it's something that we might consider, right? There are a lot of advantages to having people who work at the company, especially engineers and people who are building products, not spread all around the world, but instead just in a smaller number of offices where people can work more easily together, right? If you always have to video conference or make phone calls to collaborate with people and you have to work across a lot of different time zones, that puts a big tax on working together and makes it very hard. So there are areas like in sales or partnerships where it does make a lot of sense to have local teams who are working with local partners for things like engineering offices, and which is most of what we do at the company. It really makes sense to kind of try to centralize that in as few centers as possible, which is why we don't have offices in a lot of places around the world. But as we do look to expand over time, we will certainly consider all of these countries. So thank you for the question that 45,000 people voted on, and for the Ukrainian president for writing in. I don't think we've gotten that one before.
Excellent. So I want to go to one of our fly-ins today. Ray, let's start with you. You'll be the first.
Hi, Mark. My name is Ray. I'm from New York, Brooklyn. And my question was about Oculus devices. And I really wanted to know, what's the Oculus devices used for in the future by Facebook, and what we can expect from a Facebook using the Oculus devices. Is there some kind of the particular way that we could use in the future Oculus devices?
Yeah, so Oculus and virtual reality in general are areas that I'm really excited about, right? Because every 10 or 15 years, a completely new computing platform comes along, right? So in the 90s, we had these desktop computers and laptops, and you controlled them through a mouse, and it was very indirect. And now we have these much more intuitive devices, phones, tablets, where you can tap on them and interact directly with apps and software. And when the computing devices made that leap from desktop to the modern generation, all of the apps needed to be rewritten, right? Because the way that you interacted with them is completely different in a world where you're kind of touching your device and interacting with it directly as opposed to indirectly. And I think that virtual reality and augmented reality are basically going to be the next kind of leap beyond this, where we're probably going to need to, people are going to need to rewrite all these different kinds of apps, because instead of using something on a screen, you're going to be able to be immersed in a 3D world, right? So with VR now, you can already buy an Oculus dev kit. We announced that the first consumer version is going to be coming out in I think the first quarter of next year, but you can already buy a dev kit if you want, where you can put on a pair of the goggles or headset, and it feels like you're just completely immersed in this new world, right? And you can program it to be anything. So people build games. You can be in the middle of a 3D video. So in the future, you'll be able to be courtside at a basketball game, or anything like that you want to be. It really feels like you're there, and it's pretty amazing. What I think is going to be really cool is as the form factor keeps on getting smaller and smaller, and it stops being big goggles or a headset, but instead it just starts looking like normal glasses, right, or sunglasses, where you can use it without being tied to a computer or plugged into a computer in your living room. You can move around with it and use it anywhere. I also think augmented reality, so virtual reality is where your whole vision is kind of taken up by some computer-generated scene. Augmented reality is where you kind of see the world, but you can also put new objects in it, right? So today, if I want to show my friends a photo, maybe I'll pull out my phone and show them the photo on my phone. In the future, you'll just be able to kind of snap your fingers and instantiate a photo album or a big photo, make it whatever size you want, and people will be able to see it through their glasses. And I think that's pretty amazing. And it's going to take 5, 7, 10, I don't know, maybe 12 years to build that out and have that be something that really works. And that is cheap enough for everyone around the world to use. And these big shifts in computing only happen, once every 10 or 15 years. But that's what we're trying to do with Oculus. We bought this company that is clearly the leader in virtual reality technology. Realized that there's going to have to be a ton of work ahead. They wanted to join us because Facebook is a company that can really afford to invest in this and believes in what we're going to need to do in order to achieve that full vision. And I just hope that over 5, 7, 10 years we get there and we can deliver this. But starting in 2016, you're going to be able to buy a consumer Oculus device and play a lot of games and access a lot of immersive video content, and it's going to be really cool. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Mark, I want to get to one of our video questions. Don't worry, guys. We'll get a question from the room really soon. This one comes from Alicia in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So let's turn to the monitors and tee that up.
Hey, everybody. My name's Alicia Kefauver. I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. My question for Mark is, why does Facebook only really advertise for donations on an international and global scale?
I have the question here, so I'll read it for you, Mark. So she says, why does Facebook only advertise for global disasters and not American ones?
Yeah. So as you guys know, there was just this really bad pair of earthquakes in Nepal, right? Both over 7.0. And one of the things that we do when there are these natural disasters around the world is we have a series of tools. One is Safety Check, which we can basically turn on for people who are in an area around a natural disaster, and people can mark themselves as safe, right? Or if you talk to a friend who is in that area, then you can mark them as safe. And what will then happen is all of their friends and family will get notified that they're safe. And I mean, it's, for any of you guys who have ever had a family member or a friend who is in a region where there's an earthquake or a typhoon or something like that, all you want to know is that they're safe, right? I mean, if when you love someone, you just want to make sure that they're okay. So out of the earthquakes in Nepal, being able to get notifications that people were safe, I think was a big deal. And 7 million people were marked as safe within, I think, a day, and 150 million of their friends and family were notified. So that's kind of one thing that we were doing. Another is, in the event of these natural disasters, we try to help our community come together to raise money for the relief efforts. And in this case, the Facebook community came together and donated, I think it was almost $16 million in total. The last number that I saw was, I think it was 15.7 million. And then on top of that, Facebook donated an additional 2 million to the relief efforts. So, I feel like that's kind of the least that we can do, right? I mean, the relief effort is going to be a really long, ongoing thing that's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars to rebuild the cities and homes and all the stuff that were destroyed. And obviously, it can't bring back the thousands or 10,000 people who were hurt or killed in this. But it's something that I feel like our community can do, and I'm glad that we do that. In the U.S., we've been fortunate in that we haven't had a crazy earthquake or natural disaster like this recently. There are certainly other issues that we have that we've tried to build tools to empower people on. So, for example, one example is Amber Alerts. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but there's this program for abducted and missing children, which it's not. That's not an earthquake. It doesn't affect everyone at once, but when this program that runs these Amber Alerts hears of a child who has gone missing, they can issue an Amber Alert out to people who are nearby in an area. And there are a number of places in which these Amber Alerts show up. But we realized if we show these on Facebook to people who are in that area, that'll be how most people see them. So we built an Amber Alerts tool, and we've only actually had to turn it on a few times, but fortunately, one of the times that we turned it on, we actually were able to help someone in our community, looked at it, saw the picture, and then actually realized that the kid who was missing was nearby, understood that because of seeing the Amber Alert on Facebook, and then called the police, and the kid was saved. So there are different things, I think, for each of these different communities around the world that we can be doing to enable the broader Facebook community to come together and help people who are in need. And we're going to try to do more of those. I just think that this is our social responsibility, is to give our community more tools to do these different kinds of things, and we'll certainly want to do more over time.
All right, so let's open to the room. Who has questions here? You have a question? Come on over. Come hang out with me over here.
Thank you. My name is Sachi. I was actually born in Nepal, and I have a lot of family members there currently. And just having that safety check that you just mentioned was like a great relief. It was hard. The phone lines were hard to reach, and just having that safety check was a great factor. And I just want to thank you on behalf of me and the whole Nepalese community for doing such a great job, and the donation and everything. It's just been great. So really thank you for all that.
All right, let's go for a question now.
Okay, on a completely different note, I work in a biotech company, and a lot of these Google, Apple, they're all moving towards kind of biotech, same page as helping the community with health care and all that. So I was just wondering if in the long future you have any plans of kind of venturing that avenue, like biotech or anything like that.
Maybe. But the way that I think we can help solve problems in the world is by bringing people together, right? I mean, that's our mission, is around connecting people and connecting the world overall. And there are some pretty amazing stories that we hear from folks in our community about how they are coming together for health reasons, right? So whether it's folks who all have an illness in common, forming support groups. I've heard stories of folks who all had a kind of cancer that there was no treatment for. And one challenge for companies that are trying to design drugs to cure diseases is you need to find a group of people who has the disease, who's willing to be in a trial, to run the test. And often it costs so much money, and it's so hard to find people who are willing to do a trial for a drug, that often drug companies will sometimes prioritize which drugs they develop based on what they think that they will be able to trial. So we've actually heard of examples from people coming together to create Facebook groups for diseases that did not have cures, and came together and basically said, all put their hands up and say, if a company designs a drug, everyone who's a part of this group is signed up to be a part of the trial. And then, some companies have actually come through and delivered different trial drugs for that. So, Facebook as a company, we're never going to be the company that's designing the drugs, right? I mean, that's just not what we're good at in the world. And I think that's probably not a good use of, the people at our company, because we're just not experts at that. So what we should try to do is empower other folks who are to do their best work. Another example that I think is pretty interesting on this is, we have this whole developer platform where we try to empower engineers and entrepreneurs around the world to build different companies and nonprofits and tools that help people connect in different ways as well. And there are a couple of tools that have been built, especially in other countries, that try to bring people together around like blood donations and things like that. And these are all problems of connecting people, right? And if we can help match people who have compatible blood types, who need transfusions, or match people who need to get an organ donation or something like that, then those are big health problems that we can help solve just by fulfilling this mission of connecting people. And those are the types of things that we're going to look at trying to do more and more over time.
Let's go for another video here and cue it up that comes in from India.
Hi Mark and the Facebook team out there. I am Shambhavi Chaudhary from Bengaluru, India. I am a software developer. First and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the entire Facebook team for connecting our world like never before. So Mark, my question to you would be, how important is internet.org for the Facebook, and how do you see this initiative making our world a better connected global village? Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good question. So for those of you guys who haven't heard of internet.org and what we're doing here, we have this whole effort where we're trying to help everyone in the world get on the internet. It turns out that the vast majority of people in the world have no access to internet, right? And living, here in the U.S. or especially here in Silicon Valley, it's pretty easy to miss that fact. But it turns out that there are about 7 billion people in the world, and only about 2.7 or 2.9 billion people have any access to the internet at all. So there are more than 4 billion people, the majority of people in the world, who don't have any access. And that's what we're trying to solve through this internet.org program, where we basically go around the world working with mobile operators and governments and local entrepreneurs to be able to offer some basic internet services for free. And the way that I kind of think about this is, it's kind of like, in the US we have 911, right? So even if you can't afford to pay for your mobile phone, you can still always dial 911, right? And you can get help on basic things that you need. And I just think that there should be a version of this for the internet, where people can access some basic education information, health information, job listings, some basic things that you need. And the idea is that by getting access to this content, we actually find that more people who use these basic services then go and decide to go pay for a data plan and get full access to the internet. So out of those 4 billion people, it actually, a lot of them can afford to pay for the internet, but maybe they grew up and they didn't have a computer, they haven't used the internet, and they're not sure why they would want the internet yet. But by trying it out and using some of these basic services, a lot of folks then end up using it. So what we found in research that other firms and companies have done is that for every 10 people that gain access to the internet, one person is lifted out of poverty. So in countries like India, right, I mean, India has 1.25 billion people, and actually more than 1 billion of them are not on the internet. So if we could snap our fingers and connect all of them, then there would actually be 100 million fewer people in India in poverty. So I actually think that this is one of the bigger things that we need to go around and do in the world. And it kind of makes sense, right, if you think about it. If, people need a lot of things to live good lives, but access to education information, health information, job opportunities, all that kind of stuff, are a lot of the things that people need to be able to go get jobs and join the modern economy. So in a country like India, where a lot of people are not connected to the internet, giving people those tools really is pretty empowering. And it's not the only thing that needs to happen, but I think it's one of the big things that we're working on doing. So that's a big effort for Facebook. It's one of the things that I'm really passionate about. Our mission is to help connect everyone in the world. Obviously, we cannot do that if the majority of people are not even on the internet. When we were getting started as a small company, when I was getting started in my dorm room, you don't kind of dream about one day we're not just going to build a service that a lot of people use, but we're also going to try to get people on the internet. But now we're a bigger company, and a lot of people use Facebook, and we have the resources to go try to take on some of these bigger problems. So I feel like we have a responsibility to do that. And I actually am spending a lot of my time doing this, flying around, meeting with different governments, and trying to get folks on board to support this program. And we're making good progress. This week, we launched in our 10th country, Malawi. And as of this week, there are now 1 billion people who are in countries that Internet.org supports, who can go into a store, get a phone, and get some free basic internet access. And it's not 1 billion people using it yet. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of getting the word out that this is available. But there are, I think the latest number was 9 million people who are using the internet for the first time who were never using it before because of the efforts that Internet.org is doing. So I'm excited about this, and I'm excited to keep doing it.
I just want to add on to that. We just added on to Bangladesh on Monday.
Yeah.
So we are working on that team. We want to thank you on behalf of 160 million people. You are making a difference.
Thank you. Yeah, we launched in Bangladesh earlier this week, too.
So I want to cut to someone who has actually flown in to ask a question, Mark. So Josh, it's your moment.
Hi, Mark. Josh Dooley, Fort Worth, Texas. My question was, has Facebook considered something like a newsreel to broadcast current events that are more lined up with like Facebook strategy, goals, and values? So not just current events that I can get from any media outlet, but all of your acquisitions or just what initiatives Facebook is involved in, things, a way to share that.
So I appreciate the question, because the implication is that you're interested in Facebook news, which I don't know if most people who use Facebook do. So I appreciate that. And probably the best thing for your question is, we have pages, right? I'm just like a lot of businesses around the world. We have a Facebook page. We have pages for different kinds of work that we do. So we have a page for Oculus, a page for Internet.org, and you can subscribe to those pages and get updates on all the different things that we're doing from that. Now, our principle in designing our product is that we try to not have an editorial voice overall, right? So we don't want to put in people's news feeds content about Facebook unless they've specifically asked for that content, right? Our mission is to basically help connect people, help people stay in touch with the people they love, their friends, the interests that they care about. But all of that stuff are things that people sign up for, right? You become friends with the people that you want to hear from. You like the pages that you want to get content from. So I think it's something like 60 million people, or it might actually be 160 million. I forget the exact number. Have liked the Facebook page, and I think are getting content from it. But for those who are not interested in hearing news about Facebook, then we're not going to kind of push that into your news feed. This is a good opportunity, though, to talk about some new stuff that we actually are doing with news that I'm pretty excited about. This week, we just announced this new product called Instant Articles. And the basic idea of this is that, I don't know how many of you guys read news and click and tap on links that you see in Facebook. But from my perspective, it's actually one of the more annoying things that I really don't like about the Facebook app right now is you're browsing through and you're scrolling and you come across a story that you want to read and you tap on it and it takes 10 seconds to load. And so one of the things that we're starting to do is work with news sources directly, so that way they can just send the news into our servers, and that way when you tap on that article, it just loads immediately. And from my perspective, faster is always better when you're designing products. No one in our community has ever told us I want to wait longer to get access to content. And a lot of people complain and tell us that one of the best things that we can do is just make stuff faster and faster and faster. And we have a lot of people who are working on that. So that's one of the things that I'm most excited about is hopefully, over the next year or so, we'll work with a lot more partners to get more content to load quickly and make the news experience within Facebook better regardless of what kind of content you're interested in.
All right, let's go back to the room. Who has questions? Let's do this quadrant now, sir. Stand up. I'll hold this for you.
Hi, my name's Kurt. How are you? Happy birthday. I had a question. I'm a Zynga gamer. I play Mafia Wars constantly. I'm addicted. And what's happening right now is posting in private groups and so forth is they're being blocked. People are being blocked constantly, and there's a constant thing where they're coming in and then they complain about it and then they get blocked a little bit longer. And my question is, what is Facebook in the future, their way of handling this type of situation and their, the social media gaming for Facebook in the future? How is that going to be handled?
So what are people being blocked for?
It's considered spamming. And they're spamming to private and closed groups. Well, if you join a closed group, you're accepted into it. There's an administration that can handle it. If you're spamming that, you would be kicked out. But what's happening is people are just leaving like Mafia Wars constantly. I've lost 7 people in my clan alone, Mafia War gods, in 3 weeks. And we only allowed 100 people. Pretty soon we're going to be empty.
So, all right, so this is a good question. All right, so games are very interesting on Facebook in that the experience for games has been pretty polarizing, right? There's a set of people, it's a large set of people, I think it's 100 million or more, who are really into games, right? Who a big part of their Facebook experience is playing games and posting about the games that they're playing and sharing stuff from their games to be able to trade items and level up and get the stuff that they need. For a whole lot of other people on Facebook, we get very negative feedback because a lot of people tell us, I never want to see anything about games. Everything that I see about games is spam, and I don't care if you've gotten to the next level on your farm, right? I mean, that's not for me. If people want to do that, then that's cool, but that's not me. So this has been this interesting balance that we've had to figure out for games, because most other content types don't have this, right? I mean, I don't think anyone in our community has ever said, I don't like photos. Like, if you could just show me everything except the photos, that would be cool. That's not something that we've heard. But with games, it is. So we've tried to build these systems that basically can try to figure out who is into games, who isn't. So that way we show people who are into games more content and people who aren't less of that, and just try to get better at not showing stuff that people are going to think is spam while still enabling people to do what they want. It's a constant struggle and constant improvement. It's not the type of thing where you solve that problem and that you're done. We'll be working on that forever. And so it's not that big of a surprise that what you're saying is that we can do a better job, because I think everyone on the team here knows that we can do a better job, both for the people who are game players and love this stuff, and for the people who don't want it to be a part of their experience. So yeah, I guess the basic answer is we just need to get better at understanding who is in which camp, and making sure that we're showing the right content to the right people.
So I have a timely question from the thread that I just want to read, and it comes from Mireille. Location unknown, but it sounds French to me. She says, Mark, okay, I'm asking, what are you and Priscilla planning to do for your birthday?
Nothing. I'm a low-key birthday person. My view is like, I get too much attention the rest of the time. So I would like to just kind of have people leave me alone on my birthday. So I'm gonna go home. We're probably gonna cook dinner, hang out with our dog, and that's my idea of a wonderful evening. Last year so this year I'm turning 31. Last year I turned 30, and I actually arranged it so I wasn't even. I flew to the other side of the country for my birthday. I was like, oh, well, maybe if I have some business meetings on my birthday, then people at Facebook can't bug me or try to do anything or surprise me. I was wrong. I came back. My assistant had filled up my conference room with balloons, which was pretty funny. But then, I'm a really stubborn person, right? So then it was like, oh, that was a funny surprise. Like maybe should we clear the balloons out? I'm like, no, I'm going to just do all my meetings with all those balloons. And so then it gave way to some pretty funny dynamics because, like, you know, the normal reviews that I have, like, a lot of them are pretty contentious. Product teams will come in and they'll talk about what they want to do or what they think they're doing, and I'll say, well, you know, are you really doing what people want? And we'll, like, have this debate back and forth. And there was this particularly contentious review that we had, and I'll just never forget it because we were sitting there. It was ridiculous. We're all, like, up to our waist in balloons, and everyone is just so sad. And they're all just, like, sitting there, and I'm just like, it's like, you guys have to do better work. It's like, you're letting our community down. We, like, need to do better work. And it's just like, so I think we have this wonderful photo of that where it's like everyone is just up to their waist in balloons, and, like, everyone is just like, oh man, what are we doing? So we're not doing that this year, but I think I'm just going to go home and cook a meal.
Excellent. So next I want to go to Troy, who's flown in here for his question.
Hey, Mark. I'm Troy from Mesquite, Texas. Kind of a weird question. More towards you than Facebook. What was your favorite video game growing up as a kid, and did that lead into any programming thoughts to get to where you are now?
Yeah. No, I think this is a really good and important question. My favorite game, since I was a kid, and I still actually really like it, although it's a few generations later, is Civilization. You get to kind of build up. It's a really fun game. Helping a civilization design an economy and develop science and stuff like that, and try to keep everyone peaceful. I like that. But what I really did a lot when I was a kid was I made a lot of games for myself, and they were terrible. But this was how I got into programming. I got a computer when I think I was 10 or 11. I started using my parents' first computer, and then got my own, and was playing games and wanted to make them better. So I just started kind of messing around and designing some stuff myself. And the games were terrible by any objective measure of a game, but there's some gratification that you get when it's your game, right? And when you're playing something that you designed. So I would do these things like, I grew up in New York, and there was all the snow, and I would kind of force my sisters to have snowball fights, and they didn't want to do that, so instead I made, like, a snowball fight game. So then everyone was happy, right? I mean, it was a terrible game, but, like, I got to play a game. They got to not get hit with snowballs. It was just a win all around. And, I do think that this dynamic around kids growing up and building games and playing games is an important one, because I actually think that this is how a lot of kids get into programming. And, I hear a lot that parents are concerned about their kids playing games, and there are valid concerns, and I think that there's an important debate to be had around that. But I do think that if you're a parent and you don't let your children use technology, but you also want them to grow up to be a computer programmer, or at least be able to, or not want to, but be open to that if that's what they want to do, then I actually think giving people the opportunity to play around with different stuff is actually one of the best things you can do to kind of help people explore give them a creative outlet and give them experience with things that they can then kind of mess around with and build some of themselves. I definitely would not have gotten into programming if I hadn't played games when I was a kid.
So Mark, I want to throw a question in here that seems to have been a hot topic recently. And it is, we've been seeing a lot of headlines in Europe about tensions with tech companies like Facebook. What's your take on that?
All right, well, that's a big one. So what's my take on this? There are a few different big trends that are going on, I think, in Europe and around the world. One big one is that this phenomenon of a company, a technology company, but really any company, being able to get started and then 10 years later be serving 1 billion people around the world. That's pretty new in the world, right? I don't think that's something that was not really possible 30 years ago. And the technology enabling that, it kind of changes a lot of things and opens up a lot of questions. And I think governments around the world are kind of figuring out what the right frameworks are for regulating really important issues like privacy and security and things that are really important, right? And that companies take seriously, but that also people rightfully rely on their governments to make sure that that there are the right laws around these things and that everyone is kind of acting in a good way. So that's kind of one trend, is just that this phenomenon of new companies is kind of a big one, a new one. The other thing in Europe specifically is there's this big debate around how much Europe should be a union, right, like the U.S., versus a bunch of independent countries. And I think that that's just a long-term ongoing debate. I mean, there's the EU and there's the Euro, but each country also has a strong national identity. And one dynamic that we see is that each country has very different laws. And that makes it very difficult to know what you're supposed to do as a company trying to offer services, right? Because you're trying to conform to, in some cases, it's 20 different versions of different kind of laws. So there's this big push in Europe recently to create what I guess the term that they're using is a single digital market, right, for the internet. So basically to have one broad set of internet regulations across the EU. And I think that would be very good. Because if you do that, you will make it so that it's easier for companies to offer services, easier for them to comply with the laws because they actually know what the laws are in all these different places, and there aren't 20 or 30 different sets of rules to follow. And the framework on this is pretty simple. Companies need to have a European headquarters. Facebook does. We have our international and European headquarters is in Dublin. I mentioned that earlier. And we have a big center there. It's a great city. That has a lot of different talented folks and a diverse set of people who can come and do great work. And so we have our international and European headquarters are in Dublin. And we basically work with the regulators there to comply with the European laws. And I think one of the big questions is Europe going to settle on having a single digital market around Europe, or are they going to try to get to a place where each country has a lot of different laws? And I think a single market would just make a lot more sense and would lead to better services for people in Europe and just more ability for companies like us to know what we're supposed to do.
All right, let's go to the room. All right, let's get this quadrant over here. We haven't been over here. How about you?
Hi, Mark. My name is Lan, and I'm a high school student at John F. Kennedy High School in Fremont, California. So my two biggest role models in tech are Sheryl Sandberg and Marissa Mayer. And my question to you is, how do you plan? How do you plan on addressing the gender gap in tech?
Yeah, I mean, these are really important questions. So it's diversity in tech is a really big issue overall. And it's not just women, it's also racial, right? And so there's a lot of work needs to be done. I can tell you what we're doing in the near term and then longer term, right? So in the near term, there's this issue, which is just that there are not enough folks who are graduating with degrees in engineering and computer science and the things that we need to be kind of the proportion that we would like, right? I mean, ideally, we'd reach a state where half of people in the country are women, and there's some percentage of people are different minorities, and we'd like to have that match what we have internally, right? I mean, it would be great if we could have half our engineers be women, and kind of the same proportional base for different minorities. I think that would be valuable. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but because we would build better services, right? I mean, there's a lot of studies that show that diverse teams just perform better, right? I mean, you have diversity of ideas, people, you have more perspectives. I mean, how can we as a company based out here hope to serve more than 1 billion people around the world if we don't have a good amount of diversity in our company that are building these services and interacting with people? So this is a big thing that we're really focused on. In the short term, when the supply is too short, right, there are not enough female engineers or black engineers or Latino engineers to get to the goal that we have. So what we do is we just try harder to go find and recruit the folks who are out there, right? So we actually have specific teams that do diversity recruiting, and it might take one recruiter at Facebook might be able to recruit, I'm just going to make a number up, but say 10 people a year. But because recruiting for diversity is harder, we'll say, okay, we'll have this pool of folks who are just focused on diversity, and even if you just recruit 5 of these harder to find folks for the year, then that's awesome because we need these people. And so the bar is the same, right? So we don't we have kind of the same talent bar for everyone, but what we know is that we want to go out and find more candidates, a disproportionate amount of candidates who are women and minorities. That way we can have folks who come into the company and grow the percentage of our diversity. Longer term, though, we're not going to solve this problem unless we start earlier in people's lives and get more folks to go into studying computer science in some of these fields, right? Which I think is why some of these questions, like the question about gaming, are important, right? Because we as a society need to get to a point where everyone has the same opportunity and the same ability to be playing with technology and experimenting with different things, because that's how you eventually get into engineering, and you learn and you mess around with things and you design some things, and most of the engineers who I know who are the best engineers are self-taught, right? I mean, it's not because they took some class, it's because they were just interested and they got into it. So I think we need to work on ways as a society to get more exposure out to people, so that way the next set of high schoolers who are coming through the system, by the time that you graduate from college, we don't have the same underrepresentation of diversity in the graduate pool. So there's a short-term and a long-term thing. We got to do both. It's really important. It's not just the right thing for society, but when we do this and when we get to a better state, we will build better services for the world.
So next I have a fashion question, actually, that's come in from the
This
thread.
can't be good.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great. It's good to think about, on your birthday. So it's from Nia, who writes in from Switzerland. She says, Mark, what are you going to do when you get tired of wearing T-shirts and hoodies in the coming years? I mean, it seems a bit odd for an 80-year-old to wear a hoodie.
All right. Well, I have like 50 more years, so I think I'll figure that out by the time hopefully I live to be 80. I don't know. My philosophy on this, which I've, interesting that this is not the first question at a town hall Q&A about gray T-shirts, but the philosophy is, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about fashion, as you can see, and that's because there's a lot of psychological research that shows that when people make decisions, it takes some of your energy, right? Even if it's a small decision, like what you're going to eat for breakfast or what you're going to wear, and I don't want to spend my energy on that. I want to come in and spend my time and my energy working on things that are going to build better products and help connect the world, right? So even if this is just a small thing, it helps me not have to think about some of this other stuff, and I appreciate that. So, so I don't know. When I'm 80, I don't know. Maybe who knows what kind of incredibly unfashionable thing I'll have. Maybe I'll wear like a unitard. I mean, it's or a one piece. A unitard may be bad, but what is it called? A onesie? Yeah, I mean that would be.
It sounds comfort focused. I like that.
Yeah.
So we have one more
onesie,
person.
I think is what I meant. I think unitard would traumatize a lot of people.
Onesie's good. So we have one more person who's flown in, Ramsey here. So I want to make sure we get to you.
First of all, happy birthday. I'm from Kansas City. My name is Ramsey Mosen. My question's about Messenger. Earlier this year you announced the platform, a lot of really cool, exciting features that were announced. I'm curious, what's your vision for Messenger? Do you see it as a replacement for email? What's your vision for the product?
Yeah, so we're really focused on messaging right now, and we build Messenger, which a lot of people are using now to connect with friends on Facebook. We also acquired WhatsApp, and they joined us last year. And a lot of people use WhatsApp around the world for free text messaging and really just a fast, reliable service. So, the goal is we want to build all of the basic communication utilities that people want to use, right? And we want to make higher quality versions of what you've had in the past, and we want to make them free, right? So, so in the past, people had to pay for SMSs. In a lot of countries, it's still actually quite expensive to pay for SMSs. People are paying for phone calls and long-distance phone calls. And we just think that all that stuff, we can make it better and we can make it cheaper. And that's valuable for folks. So with services like Messenger and WhatsApp, they're free. People use them to communicate a lot. You can express a lot of different things that you couldn't necessarily do in texting. You can communicate in groups, right? So texting over groups is kind of annoying and pretty cumbersome. But with things like Messenger and WhatsApp, it's super easy to do. It's actually a lot of what people do is they have a group for their family or a close group of friends, and they'll just have this thread, and it'll be running for months or a really long period of time, and that might be the primary way that they keep in touch with folks. So that's really cool, and we're trying to enable that. I'm really excited recently about VoIP calling, right? The ability to call someone through Messenger or WhatsApp now too. And one of the reasons why I'm excited about this is that the quality of calls that you can make with VoIP is actually higher than the quality that you can make by making a normal voice call on your phone, because they actually go over two different networks. The voice call goes over this voice network that mobile operators have, and VoIP goes over the data network that the internet goes over. And the internet is going over a much higher bandwidth connection. So when you're making a VoIP call, you can actually it's a much higher bit rate. It's much more fidelity. And if you go try this out after this Q&A, give someone a call on Messenger or WhatsApp, you'll probably notice that it's just a higher quality call and it's free. So I think if we can deliver this to not only people here in the U.S. but all over the world, especially where a lot of people are still charging a lot for this stuff, that's really valuable. And it's a really important utility for helping people stay connected. Right? A lot of what people do is just text the people that they love.
Okay, I want to go back to the room. My folks over here haven't gotten a question yet. What about you, sir? Back there, you want to come hang out with me over on the side?
Hi, Mark. My name is Prabhanchan. And I wanted to talk about some of the social services that you're talking about adding into Facebook. As you know that now it's more than 1 billion people on Facebook, and most of them are youngsters. So the religion is going to be a religion now, a new religion, according to me. And for some countries like India, developing countries like India, where there are educated people but they don't have enough guidance, can you make something new in Facebook like task of the week or video of the week, where you get someone to talk about some coming issues in the future like deforestation or pollution or such kind of social issues that are going to come they're very near to us. So, and for kids who are growing up, they're spending their time on Facebooking, on chats or messaging, but there can be other things like, some of the videos that you can make it like, the project of the week, where children they're interested to build some projects, and then you can actually nominate a leader among them and, make this feature grow like an intellectual property in them.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a good question. Wherever possible, our philosophy is to try to not insert ourselves, but instead just let people share what matters to them, right? So a lot of these things, we build tools like trending topics where, if a lot of people are talking about something, we'll surface that more. Even the stuff that we highlight, like the earthquake in Nepal, we didn't actually do the work, right? I mean, we just highlighted it because, we knew that this was an important thing that a lot of people cared about, and we donated money, but our community actually came together and donated a lot more money, and the community did that, right? I mean, we didn't do that. So overall, I think the goal over time is going to be not to do more and more ourselves, but to build more and more tools to empower people to organize around all these different causes, right? So whether it's raising awareness for the kind of causes that you're talking about, deforestation or whatever different issues people care about, and there's certainly a ton of different important issues in the world that need to get dealt with and solved, or health issues like the ones that we talked about earlier. Our goal over time will be to build tools that empower people to do that. and use the social network and the connections that they have on Facebook to kind of self-organize in groups of people that are interested in taking on these different problems and have the solutions come about that way, rather than having the answer always be, we put something on top of newsfeed, right? Which obviously that's not that scalable, and we can't do that every day and can't cover all of the important issues in the world. So I do think that this is going to be a much better way to solve these issues over time, is just giving people more and more tools to do this.
Mark, we actually got a question on the thread about Mother's Day, and I spied your mom in the audience, so I feel like this is going to keep you really honest.
There you go. No parents.
But people want to know, what did you do with your mom for Mother's Day this past Sunday?
So I'm lucky. My whole family lives out here, and so everyone came over for a nice brunch, and we all thanked my lovely mother, who's here, for growing up, you guys really did a lot to give us opportunities, and you sacrificed a lot and did a lot of hard work, and I really appreciate that I was able to come home after school every day and see you guys, and I don't know. That's definitely shaped me and my life a lot. So yeah, I feel fortunate to have my parents around here and be able to see them frequently, and have my parents be able to come by our town hall Q&As, and which I actually didn't even know you guys were going to come, but that's awesome. You guys are welcome to come to any of my town hall Q&As. And even if you weren't welcome, I don't even think I'd be able to say that because you're my parents. But I thought it was nice. We had a nice brunch.
All right, I've got one last question here. I think here from Andrew.
Okay. Hi, Mark. So I have one question. I'm a small business owner. I have a place called Boba Guys up here in San Francisco. I have a question. So given the decline in organic reach, how should businesses like ours or any business think about the role of pages?
Yeah, this is an important question. So just to give some context on this, we're always trying to improve the algorithm that shows the most relevant content in newsfeed, right? And there have been a few questions that have touched on this. There was the game question before, where some folks want to get game content, some folks don't. Some folks want to see a lot of content from businesses in their newsfeed, others don't. And what we try to do is continually improve how accurate we are in getting people the content that they're going to be interested in the system. So that's what we're trying to do with all the changes that we're making in newsfeed. For some of this, for people who are less interested in getting commercial content or content from businesses, we're showing less of that content. And that is leading to some businesses getting less organic reach, basically, when they post from their pages than they used to. They might have used to reach half of their fans in a day, and now I'm just making up numbers, but because this is going to vary by business to business. But now maybe instead you're reaching half of that. So the question is, how should you think about that? And there are a couple of things as a business owner that I would suggest that you think about when you're running your Facebook page. The first is that regardless of the changes that we've made, Facebook actually is still the best way to distribute stuff to all of the people that you're trying to reach and all your customers, right? It's probably all your customers, or most of them, are on Facebook. And you probably have more connections on Facebook than any other tool. So I actually think that even if the amount is declined a little bit as we are trying to make people's news feeds better and more personal, Facebook remains a great way to reach people. So that means that from that perspective, you probably don't actually need to adjust your behavior that much. The second thing is that a lot of businesses, I think, focus on the distribution of newsfeed, right? And how much are their posts being seen in newsfeed? And that doesn't take into account a second really important thing, which is that a lot of people actually go visit pages, right? And especially on mobile, where a lot of websites just are not designed well for mobile web yet, right? So they're still designed for big screens and they don't display well on a browser. It was a lot easier to navigate to a small business web page on desktop, whereas on mobile, most people spend more of their time in apps than on the web, and a lot of people probably aren't going to download a lot of apps for every small business that they interact with. What we're seeing is that people's pages on Facebook are actually becoming a more and more important presence where customers will actually go look them up to see hours that a restaurant or a store are open, to see what their friends think about it. Typical types of things that you might have previously gone to the website to go see. So I guess that's kind of how I would think about Facebook pages running a business. One is that the distribution is still really good, even as we're going to continue tweaking it to give everyone the best news feed experience that we can. And two is focus more on the part where people are actually directly navigating to your page to create the best landing experience that you can for mobile, because in the future, I think a lot of people are going to go to business Facebook pages in addition to web.
So that's all we have time for.
All right.
That's the end of it. I'll let you close us out, Mark.
Thank you for coming out. These town hall Q&As are...
Everybody have a seat. Can you guys stay in your seats for me?
One moment. These Q&As are really valuable for me. I love doing them and hearing what you guys are thinking about, and hopefully I gave some useful answers and information. But it's also really useful for me just to hear what you guys are thinking about. And I'm definitely going to go take away the questions that you guys are asking and have voted on. And I'm going to go meet with our teams and try to make sure that we do a better job to serve you better in everything that we're doing. So now to wrap up, I think we're going to take one big group picture. But everyone, stay seated.
All right. All right, I got this.
Don't everyone come rush me.
Exactly. Okay.